On my 30th birthday, I didn't get a cake or a hug. I got a sentence that cut deeper than any knife. It's time you stop freeloading. My dad's voice was cold, final, and by nightfall, I was standing outside with nothing but a suitcase. Most people would have screamed, begged, or cried. I did none of that. Instead, I opened my laptop in the dark, my hands shaking, my heart pounding. Within hours, their credit cards froze. By morning, their bills bounced one by one. What they never knew was that I had been quietly keeping score all along. I used to believe that family was sacred, that no matter how heavy the weight, I should carry it because blood demanded it. For years, I bent my back under debts that weren't mine, bills that never carried my name, until my father quietly signed it there, obligations that multiplied faster than I could pay them. Each month, as I wired money home, I told myself it was love, that sacrifice was proof of devotion. My friends envied me for being so close to my family. If only they had seen the truth. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was a walking bank. I brushed it off when my parents started joking in front of relatives. Claire is our family ATM. My father would laugh, and my mother would nod proudly. I laughed too, cheeks burning, convincing myself it was harmless banter. But inside, something shifted each time. It didn't feel like a joke when they asked for rent money, and I handed it over without question. It didn't feel like a joke when my credit card statements ballooned with charges I hadn't made. The day I finally saw how deep the hole ran was the day I came home from work to find my parents broadcasting a TikTok live. They sat in the living room, surrounded by shopping bags, unboxing designer shoes and electronics, while viewers flooded the comments with fire emojis and rich family goals. The ring light glowed in their eyes, and on the screen in the corner, my credit card number appeared, blurred but unmistakably mine. They had linked my account directly to their page, every gift and super chat charged to me. My stomach twisted, but they laughed into the camera, thanking our daughter Claire for always supporting us. I wanted to scream, but I swallowed it. I told myself again, this is love, this is family. If I just keep giving, maybe they'll see me not as a wallet, but as a daughter again. That hope, naive and fragile, kept me quiet. I thought I was choosing love. I didn't realize I was choosing chains. I had convinced myself it was only a silly game, a family quirk. I thought it was a harmless joke until my birthday came. That night, my phone buzzed at 2 a.m. I answered, my mother's voice sharp and impatient. "Claire, the car payment is due tomorrow. Pay it now." I blinked at the clock. "Mom, it's 2 in the morning," she snapped. "Do you want us to lose the car? Stop being selfish." The call ended only when I logged into my bank and transferred the money. I sat there in the dark, the glow of the screen reflecting back at me, wondering why guilt weighed heavier than exhaustion. It wasn't the first time. Sometimes it was utilities, sometimes it was insurance, sometimes it was loans I had never even heard of until the notice came. And always, always the same threat woven into their words. If you don't help, you don't love us. If you turn your back, you are ungrateful. Gaslighting was their favorite weapon. They painted me as cruel for hesitating, manipulative for needing a break. Over time, I believed them. I believed that my worth as a daughter depended on how quickly I rescued them. So I worked harder. I took extra shifts, cut corners in my own life, skipped vacations, skipped meals. All the while telling myself, one day, they'll thank me. One day they'll see how much I've given. But that day never came. Instead, every sacrifice I made became invisible, swallowed by the endless hunger of their demands. I remember once, after paying off a particularly large debt, I called my father to say I was struggling with my own rent. He chuckled. "Don't exaggerate. You're single. You have no kids. What could possibly be so hard? Be grateful you're able to help your family." I bit my lip until it bled, tasting iron, forcing a cheerful response. But inside I was screaming. I ignored the red flags because admitting them meant admitting betrayal. And betrayal by strangers hurts, but betrayal by blood? That tears something fundamental. So I closed my eyes to the signs, telling myself they loved me, just in a complicated way. It wasn't until the night they kicked me out that the lies unraveled. I was packing my things, shoving clothes into a suitcase with trembling hands. My father's words still echoed in my head. "You're 30 now, time to stop freeloading." Each fold of fabric felt like a judgment, each zipper pulled tight like a lock on my chest. As I reached for the bottom drawer, my fingers brushed against a thick envelope. Curious, I pulled it free. Inside were stacks of unopened bills, all addressed in my name, credit cards I had never used, loan agreements with signatures that looked like mine but weren't. My breath caught, the room spinning. My parents hadn't just leaned on me, they had stolen from me. They had built their comfort on my destruction. I sank to the floor, the papers scattering around me like shards of glass. For a long time I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The truth lay naked in my hands. I was nothing more than collateral to them. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel love. I felt something sharper, colder, more dangerous. I felt rage. The shouting was louder than the rain. My father's voice cracked through the house like a whip. "Pack your things, you're done here." I barely had time to zip my suitcase before he yanked it from my hands and hurled it out the front door. The thud of it hitting the wet concrete rang louder in my chest than the storm itself. My mother stood in the doorway, arms folded, her silence sharper than any insult. Behind her, my brother smirked, his phone raised, the red circle of a live stream glowing. "Say hi to everyone, sis," he sneered, panning the camera toward me, as if I were some kind of sideshow. Comments flew across the screen. What did she do? "LOL drama family," he laughed, turning back to my father. "This is gold, Dad. People are eating it up." I wanted to disappear. Instead, I stood there, soaked and shaking, watching my own humiliation broadcast to strangers. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it might break through my ribs. My family wasn't just discarding me, they were profiting from my disgrace. The rain blurred my vision, but it couldn't wash away the memories flooding in. Every time I'd bailed them out, every time I'd believed their lies, every time I'd thought if I gave more, maybe they'd finally see me. All of it unraveled now, unraveling as fast as the storm-soaked mascara running down my cheeks. I dragged my suitcase down the street, the wheels catching on cracks, the weight almost too much to carry. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't go back. I found a bench under a flickering streetlight and collapsed, hugging my knees to my chest. The rain dripped from my hair, seeping into my clothes, chilling me to the bone. My birthday, 30 years alive. And this was my gift. My hands trembled as I pulled my laptop from the suitcase. I wasn't sure why. Habit, desperation, or maybe instinct. The screen glowed to life, casting a pale light on my wet skin. For a moment, I just stared at it, unsure what I was even searching for. But then something inside me shifted. The humiliation hardened into something else, something sharper. I opened my bank account. The numbers blinked back at me, familiar yet wrong. Charges stacked higher than I remembered, debts in my name that I hadn't agreed to. My pulse quickened. I dug deeper, pulling up statements, loan accounts, credit applications. My eyes caught on a digital signature, looping across the screen in a handwriting eerily similar to mine. Except it wasn't mine. My parents hadn't just leaned on me, they had become me. They had forged my name, taken loans in my identity, signed me into debts I didn't even know existed. The pit in my stomach gave way to fire. Betrayal wasn't a strong enough word. This was theft. This was a violation so intimate it made my skin crawl. I whispered into the night, though no one was there to hear me. If they could sign my name on debt, what else could they do? I paused, staring at the screen, heart hammering. If you were in my place, if you found out your parents had stolen your name, your future, your very identity, what would you do? Would you confront them? Would you call the police? Or would you, like me, realize that silence could be the sharpest weapon? The rain fell softer now, almost like applause, a rhythm against the pavement. I closed my eyes and let it sink in. I wasn't helpless. For the first time, I saw the game clearly. They had thought me weak, obedient, desperate for love. They had mistaken silence for ignorance, but silence could also mean preparation. I began saving everything: screenshots, statements, contracts with forged signatures. My fingers steadied as I organized the files, each click echoing like a promise. I wasn't crying anymore. My tears had dried, replaced by a cold determination. They had tried to erase me, but in doing so, they had handed me every weapon I needed. And so beneath that flickering streetlight, drenched and alone, I didn't break. I documented. I archived. I prepared. I closed the laptop with a snap, the sound sharp in the night air. My father's words replayed in my head. Time to stop freeloading. Fine, I would stop being their crutch. But they had no idea how quickly the ground beneath them was about to collapse. Back in the tiny motel room I had scraped together enough cash to rent, I turned my laptop on again. The glow of the screen became my only source of warmth, my lifeline. I told myself I wouldn't look for comfort anymore. I would look for evidence. I started with the family email account. My mother had never been careful with passwords, assuming I would never pry. But that night, I typed the familiar code, and the inbox unfolded like a vault left ajar. I clicked through drafts and found one that made my stomach turn. It was an unsent letter to a lawyer. Instructions to transfer the entire family inheritance into my brother's name. Not a cent for me. My name was mentioned only once, in a chilling line. Claire doesn't need it. She has always been our support, not the other way around. I sat frozen, fingers hovering above the keyboard. I read it again and again, the words etching themselves into my skin. All those years of sacrifice weren't just unrecognized. They had been twisted into proof I deserved nothing. I moved methodically now, saving every file, screenshotting every draft. Next, I combed through old bank portals and utility accounts. I dug up hidden charges, double payments, balances intentionally concealed. I opened my phone recordings app, where dozens of saved calls lay forgotten. On one, my father's voice sneered, "If she won't pay, We'll just make her. She owes us for being alive. My chest tightened, but I hit save, labeling the file carefully. Evidence. Every cruel word. Every signature that wasn't mine. Proof they could never erase. Then came the discovery that shifted everything. As I traced conversations across messaging apps, I realized there was a group chat I had never been invited to. My brother's name appeared there, along with my parents and a few cousins. Curious, I clicked an old link buried in my mother's email. The chat opened, the backlog of messages flooding my screen. They had been talking about me for years, planning how to stretch my paychecks, laughing about which excuse would guilt me fastest. Tell her the doctor needs another test. Say the bank called. She'll always fold if you play the bad daughter card. They reduced my life to strategies, as if I were a puzzle to be solved, a resource to be drained. My hands shook, but not with fear this time, with fury. I was no longer blind. Every message I saved was another thread I pulled from the web they had spun around me. And with each one, I grew steadier. When I finally closed the chat, my reflection in the screen looked different. Not a victim, not a daughter chained, a strategist. I'm not their puppet anymore, I whispered. I hold the pieces now. Still, pieces mean little without allies. For the first time in my life, I reached out, not to family, but to someone I trusted. I called Lena, my oldest friend, the one person who had always sensed something was wrong. The words tumbled out of me, raw and jagged. She didn't hesitate. "We're making a plan," she said firmly. Within hours, she had created a shared folder titled Backup Plan. Inside it, she began organizing the files I sent, labeling them neatly, building a fortress of truth. But even with Lena, I knew I needed more. Alone, I was a story too easy to dismiss. Together with others, I could be undeniable. That night, after hours of searching, I found an online forum for survivors of toxic families. I hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then I wrote my first anonymous post. I found out my parents have been stealing from me. I have proof, but I don't know what to do next. The responses came fast. Dozens of voices, strangers who knew exactly what I felt. They shared tips about legal steps, financial forensics, even emotional tactics to stay steady when gaslighting came back strong. One message in particular stopped me cold. "Is your family the Mitchells on Maple Avenue?" My breath caught. The user went on. "Everyone around here knows about them. They brag about having a daughter who pays for everything. You're not a secret. You're their legend." My stomach twisted, equal parts humiliation and relief. The darkness I had lived in wasn't private. It was notorious. My suffering had been turned into neighborhood gossip, another layer of exploitation. Yet in that exposure was a strange power, proof I wasn't crazy, proof others had seen the truth, even when I denied it. I leaned back, the hum of the laptop filling the silence. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of strength, not rooted in money or obligation, but in clarity. I wasn't alone. There were people willing to help, people who had lived through worse and clawed their way out. And now, with evidence in one hand and allies in the other, I felt the ground shift beneath me. I closed the forum tab, a faint smile tugging at the corners of my lips. "I'm not fighting this war by myself anymore," I whispered. That night, as the rain tapered off and the motel room fell silent, I opened my banking app one last time. My heart thudded in my chest, but my hands were steady. I scrolled through the list of cards tied to my account, their cards. Each one bore their names but was rooted in my credit, my trust, my blind loyalty. I hovered for a moment, breathing deeply, then pressed disable. 1, 2, 3. The clicks echoed like locks snapping shut on a cage, only this time I was the one holding the key. I didn't sleep much after that. My laptop glowed on the bedside table, and every so often I refreshed the page just to be sure the freeze was in place. A strange calm filled me, a silence in my body where chaos had lived for so long. I thought of all the times I had answered their calls in the middle of the night, all the debts I had swallowed, all the tears I had hidden. This time I wasn't bending, I was cutting the cord. Morning came. Notifications flooded my phone before I even opened my eyes. I didn't need to check to know what was happening. Still, curiosity pushed me to swipe. There they were, frantic texts from my mother, caps locked and incoherent. Why are the cards declined? Fix it now. We're live. I opened the live stream out of morbid curiosity. My parents sat under the same glowing ring light, shopping bags piled high around them. My father waved a pair of brand new sneakers at the camera, bragging about gifts from our supportive daughter. He swiped the card, smiled for the audience, then froze. The screen flashed red. Declined. He tried again. Declined. My mother leaned in, whispering furiously, but the microphone caught every word. Try the other one. Another decline. The comment section exploded. Wait, didn't they say their daughter pays? LMAO, this is embarrassing. Are they broke? Viewers clipped it instantly, reposting it with captions like family goals or family fraud. Within hours, the video went viral, strangers online feasting on the very humiliation my parents had once broadcast for laughs. I watched, pulse racing, a twisted mix of satisfaction and sorrow. This wasn't the revenge I had dreamed of. It was better. Not because I hurt them, but because their own greed did. All I had done was remove the lifeline they had stolen. The rest was their doing. But I wasn't finished. Because humiliation fades, people forget. My parents would try to twist the story, repaint themselves as victims, and they did. Within hours, their Facebook page was full of rants about me. Our daughter turned against us. She froze our accounts. After everything we did for her, she abandoned her family. Pictures of me as a child appeared alongside captions like, ungrateful, heartless, a disgrace. For a moment, it hurt. The comments from their friends cut deep. How could she? Poor parents? But then I opened my folder, the one Lena had titled Backup Plan. Dozens of bank statements, loan documents, screenshots of the group chat where they mocked me. I chose a handful, the ones that told the story clearly without a single word from me, and posted them. The silence afterward was deafening. Not a single friend of theirs defended them. One by one, relatives who had cheered their cruelty went quiet. No comments, no shares. My phone buzzed with private messages from cousins. We didn't know. I'm sorry. I can't believe they did this. For years, I had been isolated, made to believe I was the problem. In one post, that illusion shattered. The most shocking silence came from my brother. The boy who had laughed while live streaming my humiliation didn't post a word. His page went dark. I imagined the fallout in his circles, the whispers about how he had stood by while our parents destroyed me. For once, the shame wasn't mine to carry. I sat in that motel room, phone buzzing, laptop humming, and felt the shift. For the first time, The power was no longer in their hands. It was in mine, but I wasn't naive. Social opinion was one thing, legal consequence was another. So while the storm raged online, I sent one final message, this time to my lawyer. I attached the files, the bank statements, the forged signatures, the proof that my parents hadn't just manipulated me emotionally, but had stolen from me legally. I pressed send, my hand trembling not with fear, but with something close to exhilaration. "Let's begin," I whispered to myself. The investigation began quietly, like a current beneath the surface. Weeks after I sent the files, I received a short email from the bank. "Your claims are under review. We will be in contact." For the first time in years, I felt the machine of justice moving, not against me, but for me. It didn't take long before the truth surfaced. Forged documents, altered signatures, loan applications in my name that had been signed with clumsy imitations. A representative from the bank called me, her voice professional, but tinged with disbelief. "Miss Mitchell, your parents have been using your identity for years. Some of these loans amount to hundreds of thousands. You will not be held responsible, but they will." The words washed over me like a tide. Not my debt, not my burden, not anymore. Court came next. My parents arrived, looking smaller than I had ever seen them, stripped of their bravado, their clothes neat but tired. My father avoided my eyes. My mother wore a faint smile, as if pretending everything was fine. My brother sat behind them, fidgeting with his phone, his face pale. The prosecution laid out the evidence in stark detail. The falsified documents, the credit cards, the recordings of late-night demands, clip after clip, page after page. My lawyer barely needed to speak. The truth did all the talking. I sat silently, hands folded in my lap, eyes steady. For years, I had been forced to defend myself against lies. Now I didn't utter a word. The proof spoke louder than I ever could. When the judge read the charges, fraud, identity theft, financial abuse, I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just breathed, a slow inhale that felt like the first real breath of my life. Outside the courtroom, the ripples spread. My brother's job terminated him after the viral livestream resurfaced, cited as unprofessional conduct. Former friends of my parents deleted their comments, their pages eerily silent. The house that had once been filled with laughter during live streams now stood in shameful quiet. But justice isn't a clean victory. It doesn't mend the years lost, the nights wasted in tears, the self-worth chipped away piece by piece. Sitting on the courthouse steps, reporters calling my name, I realized something. The real liberation wasn't in their punishment. It was in reclaiming my voice. The cameras wanted a statement, a dramatic declaration. I gave none. I walked away. Because justice wasn't the end of the story. It was only the ground clearing beneath me, the soil ready for something new to grow. Yet that night, back in the stillness of my apartment, the silence pressed heavy. For the first time since the chaos began, I allowed myself to unravel. I sat on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, tears spilling fast and hot. Not for them, not for the debts, not for the years wasted. For me, for the girl who had carried everyone else's burdens and never once paused to grieve her own. It was a release unlike any I had felt. I wept until the sound broke into quiet sobs, then into trembling silence. And when I finally lifted my head, my reflection in the dark window was unrecognizable. Stronger, yes, but also softer, human. For too long, people had painted me as either the perfect daughter or the cold strategist. Tonight, I was neither. I was simply Claire, someone who had been broken and was learning, slowly, to piece herself back together. The next morning, I stepped outside into a city that felt strangely new. Neighbors who once whispered behind my back nodded respectfully. No one dared call me a freeloader anymore. Not after the truth, not after the court. My name, once dragged through mud, was mine again. Still, the question lingered. Justice had cleared the path, but where would I walk now? My debts erased, my chains cut, my story no longer twisted by their lies. Freedom was mine, but freedom is not a destination. It is a beginning. I stood in the sunlight, breathing in the crisp air, a thought rising steady within me. I have my life back. Now what will I do with it? The first thing I did after the trial was sign a lease. A small apartment, nothing extravagant, but every square foot belonged to me. When I turned the key in the lock for the first time, the quiet inside wasn't heavy anymore. It was freedom. I sat cross-legged on the bare floor that night and wrote out rules in a notebook. My rule book. No lending money I can't afford to lose. No answering midnight calls drenched in guilt. No sacrificing my own health for someone else's comfort. These rules weren't chains. They were boundaries. Walls built not to keep the world out, but to keep myself safe inside. Each morning, I rebuilt myself in small ways. Therapy sessions where I spoke words I had never dared admit. I was used. I was betrayed. I'm angry. The therapist didn't judge. She nodded, handed me tools to stitch the frayed edges of my mind. In the afternoons, I pulled on sneakers and ran until my lungs burned. Each stride pounding out the ghosts of old obligations. My body, once drained by stress and exhaustion, began to feel like mine again. It was during one of those runs that I bumped into Daniel, a colleague from a job I had left years ago. We exchanged polite greetings, but his eyes lingered with curiosity. Later that week, he emailed, "I've heard what happened. I'm starting a new project. You're sharp, resilient. Want to build something that's ours, not theirs?" I read the words 3 times, my heart thudding. A chance not just to survive, but to create. I typed back a single line, "Let's talk." As I pressed send, a shiver ran down my spine. This could be the start of everything. But starting again didn't mean erasing the past, it meant rewriting it. Slowly, I poured energy into building a business with Daniel, channeling all the skills I had once used to keep my family afloat. Except now, every hour of labor, every dollar earned, belonged to me. For the first time, my work wasn't invisible, it was celebrated. The money was good, yes, but it wasn't the real reward. The real treasure came in the form of people. Not blood, not obligation, choice. Friends who checked in because they cared, not because they needed something. A community of survivors from the online forum who became a lifeline, cheering my victories, holding me up when the old guilt resurfaced, my chosen family. One night, encouraged by them, I recorded a short TikTok. No face, no names, just my voice over text. My parents kicked me out on my birthday. They called me a freeloader. That night, I froze their cards. By morning, their bills bounced. But what I found next was worse. They had stolen my name. This is how I fought back. I expected a few views, maybe a handful of comments. Instead, the video exploded. Millions watched, thousands left messages. This is my story too. Thank you for speaking what I couldn't. You just gave me courage. For once, my pain wasn't wasted. It had become a mirror for others, proof that survival was possible, that silence wasn't the only option. I scrolled through the comments late into the night, tears sliding down my cheeks. Not tears of despair this time, but of connection. Strangers across the world saw me, not as an ATM, not as a scapegoat, not as a freeloader. They saw me as Claire, a woman who had been broken but rebuilt, a woman who had been silenced but found her voice. Looking back, I realized something that still steals my breath. When my father threw my suitcase into the rain, I thought he was ending my life, but in truth, he was setting me free. Their cruelty forced me to stand alone, and standing alone taught me how to truly live. So here is the truth I carry now. They kicked me out to punish me, but in doing so, they freed me. I am no longer their daughter in chains. I am my own woman, with my own rules, my own future, my own family of choice. And if you, reading this, are trapped in a family that twists love into a weapon, remember this: you are not powerless. You can choose. You can rewrite the script. You can begin again.